Welcome, everyone, to the Activist Training Lab hosted by the Endangered Species Coalition. My name is Dalton George. I'm the National Grassroots Organizer here at the Endangered Species Coalition, and I'm really excited to announce the ESA Champions training course. Throughout the duration of this course, we're going to introduce a number of modules that explain how you can be a better ESA champion in your everyday life. And so this module is the first of many, and it will be centered around calling your representatives, putting pressure on Congress to get wins for wildlife, to communicate the need for the Endangered Species Act and biodiversity. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And so it's incredibly important to talk about the moment that we're in when we talk about putting pressure on Congress and advocating for wildlife. And so let's talk a little bit about that for a moment, right? And so first and foremost, we need to educate on the Endangered Species Act. The reality is that people really love and support the Endangered Species Act. So member groups and other organizations have found that 84% of the public, when polled, support the Endangered Species Act. We also know that the ESA works, right? 99% of the species listed under the Endangered Species Act are still with us today. Their extinction was prevented as a result of this policy. So when you have a tool that works 99% of the time, especially in lawmaking, that's pretty profound, right? And so we know that the ESA works. We know that people care about it, but it's not being reflected in policy priorities. And so what does that mean? That means that the Endangered Species Act is consistently under attack, right? In fact, it's the second most attacked piece of legislation in Congress, only behind the Affordable Care Act. And so that's an issue, especially when it's not reflecting what the public wants and what the public believes in. And so what we need right now is we need champions. We need more ESA legislators. And so I want to, as a thought exercise, challenge you to think of somebody in Congress that you view as a biodiversity champion or an Endangered Species Act champion. And so you may have had some difficulty imagining who that biodiversity or ESA champion was. And there are a number of powerful voices out there going to bat for the ESA, but not enough, and not enough that really reflects the love that people have for the ESA. And so that brings us into our next point. There needs to be accountability for these legislators to answer for when they're going up against policy that their constituents want, that their constituents believe in. And on the same in the same vein, there needs to be positive reinforcement. We need to celebrate people that step up for the ESA and wildlife. And I also think it's important to have a conversation about how overwhelmed people are in this current political moment. It's really tempting to check out and lose hope and feel like maybe your voice or your community won't have an impact on national pieces of legislation or the current political process. But there is huge opportunity. I really just want to express that. I believe in it so much, right? This is a slim Congress. There's 3 votes in Congress that separate the majority from the minority party. And that, in some cases, can be the difference between biodiversity wins and losses. That could prevent a species from going extinct in some cases. And so with that means that we hold enormous power. If we talk to our neighbors, if we talk to our friends, if we call our congressperson, we can, if just by switching one vote, make the difference on national legislation. And that's incredible. And so even though this current moment is hard and it's challenging for wildlife and the biodiversity movement, we really have an opportunity here. And if we don't organize, we don't talk to our friends, we don't talk to our community and get them passionate about wildlife in the same way that we are, we could really lose too. That's the other side of this slim margin. And lastly, right, wildlife need our voices. The wolf can't pick up the phone and call his house rep and say, I'd really like for you not to delist me. And so there's even more importance to the biodiversity movement in advocating for wildlife. And so you've got 3 people in Congress representing you for national issues, just like the Endangered Species Act. And so that's 2 senators and 1 representative. And so you want to identify who these 3 people are, and we'll have a link in the caption helping you do that. And then you want to save their DC and local office phone numbers. Know who they are. Make a call to that DC office first, and then if you can't get through, the local office is fine as well. And so when you call, you want to really have a specific ask in mind. You want to know what you want them to do, and you want to clearly state it, because sometimes there's a staffer in the office that's tallying things like this down. And so it can look like a couple of different things. So you've got vote yes or no, co-sponsor or oppose a bill, speak out publicly, or take a lead on the issue. And so what we're going to do as an exercise is maybe just call and say, we want you to speak out in support and publicly for the Endangered Species Act. That's a really good example. And so calls are tallied and reported to the member daily, and voicemails do count. I have a colleague who used to work on the Hill, and sometimes when we leave that voicemail or even call a staffer, it feels like it goes into a black box. But it really does have an impact, and people in the office begin to talk about it, especially when there's a number of folks calling on the same issue. It really does impact the way that legislation is introduced, and it introduces the concept of coverage, right, to somebody that wants to do the right thing. And these calls really shape the view that the member of Congress has on a variety of issues. It allows them to say, this is what my constituents care about. This is what the public cares about. This is what I keep hearing in district. And that really carries a lot of political weight on the Hill. And so, moving on, right? When members who agree with you but maybe haven't taken the public stand hear from their constituents, we want you to take the public stand, that can be what transforms them into a champion. And then if you think your member doesn't agree with you, right, maybe disagrees with you on the issue or on very few issues, right, they agree with you, they still need to hear from you. We shouldn't let folks get away with the fact that they aren't representing what we care about, what our district wants, what our neighbors want. And so even if you think they disagree with you, it's worth calling and stating, hey, I need you to be better on this issue. It really matters to me and my family, kind of introducing that story of self, that reason why. And so speaking of that reason why, right, we want to show you an example script so you can kind of shape what you're going to say to your member of Congress when you do make that phone call. And so you want to introduce yourself, you want to state where you live, kind of root yourself in their district or state. And then an example here, I urge the senator or representative to speak publicly in support for the Endangered Species Act. And then your reason why. And so I just want to say very quickly that your reason why really can move these politicians and these elected officials. Oftentimes it's easy to say, oh, I like this and you should do it because it's good policy. It's a whole other thing to say, this matters to me and my family because I really care about this animal or this park or this green space or biodiversity has a real role in my culture and my community. And so it's really important to introduce that reason why when you're talking to these lawmakers. It kind of breaks you out of that kind of binary yes or no and shows that you're an individual, you're a person that deeply cares, and there's a reason you're calling, and it's passion, and it's not going to go away, right? When you have a strong reason why, I want my kids to be able to see the gray wolf, right? And I don't want to see these animals go extinct. Something to that effect really does carry weight, and it leads to people talking about it on the Hill. And so I'll leave this up here for a couple more seconds to really allow you to get used to it, kind of test your script, and maybe consider making that call as soon as this video ends. And so this is wrapping up kind of the first part of our ESA Champion training, teaching you how to call your elected official. And as you may know, I'm new to the Activist Training Lab. I've taken the role that my predecessor, Sarah Starman, was leading. So hopefully you'll be seeing more videos from me as we talk about how to be an ESA champion and how to introduce good organizing fundamentals to all of our movement work. And so I do just want to talk briefly about the Activist Training Lab and where we go from here, right? And so we'll probably have future trainings discussing things like activating your people, attending actions, leveraging your platform, speaking up at town halls, local government resolutions, and then eventually meeting your rep. But I just encourage all of you to continue to view different videos of the Activist Training Lab, make that call to your elected official. I know that it can be scary. This work is often daunting, but it matters. It really does. And take a couple of minutes out of your day, make that call. You'll feel really proud of yourself and really identify the fact that you're a part of this movement alongside us. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be a biologist. ecologist. You don't have to be working full-time in environmentalism or biodiversity to be an ESA champion. And we'll be introducing more trainings to teach you just that. And so also we will have virtual webinars with some of the same material, but a little bit more in depth, a little bit more give and take. And this is kind of a model based on a model of a prior webinar. So invite you to check out our social medias to learn more about those webinars and join us for a live session as well. But thank you so much. And this has been the first session of the ESA Champion Activist Training Lab course.